All right, fantastic. Welcome everybody to our live session of the Belize real estate deep diving into the market here. I am anticipating for this session to take about an hour. As some of you who know me know that I could probably go on for much longer than an hour, but I've really tried to synthesize the most important information for you. As you are looking at real estate here in Belize, one of the most important things that you can do is be educated, get educated about what's going on, what's going on in the industry, what industry standards are, and then that way your expectations are set when you do decide to own real estate down here. So my name is Rachel Jensen. I am the broker owner of Luna Realty Belize, but I started my journey about 12 years ago here in Belize. I'm originally from New York and made my way down to Ambergris Caye in 2012. I was an intern with a real estate development company here, and they sent me down here to Belize. I was living in Nicaragua at the time. They sent me here to Belize to help out with a conference. And they said, "What are you doing this week? Fantastic. You're going to go to Ambergris Caye." I'm like, "Amber, what?" Just type Belize into Google and saw these beautiful pictures of thatched roof hotels and the Caribbean waters. And at that point, I was 21 years old. And I said, "You know what? I don't care where I'm going. This looks beautiful. I am there to help and work for whatever they need me for." And I ended up staying in Belize. Belize is my full-time residence. It is home. And I think for some of you who are on the line too, this is a place that you're considering to relocate to or spend considerable amount of time here. And I will tell you that what has truly made the experience for me, and I know for a lot of expats who live here, is the fact that the people are so incredibly friendly. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I'll give you, whether you're coming in to relocate or just coming in to spend time here, is stay humble, be humble. Remember, we're not Belizean, even at the end of the day, regardless of how long you've been here or how well you can speak or understand Creole, we are still guests in a foreign country. And the best that you're able to contribute to the community and just, remember that we're not in the States or your home country anymore. I think the more that you'll find it is an incredibly inviting place to be. And the people here are just really so incredible. It's really what builds the community. So I ended up staying with that real estate developer. I was with them until 2022. At that time, I left the development company, started working and opening the real estate brokerage. And then end of last year, we ended up having a little Belizean baby boy. So he is Belizean before I am. I do have my residency here, but he did go one step further and get his nationality. But again, as I mentioned, this is home, and this is where I look forward to welcoming many of you as well. So we are, as you know, located in Belize. Belize is about the size of Massachusetts. You can see the little country there. A lot of times Belize gets overshadowed or overlooked by places and countries like Mexico or Costa Rica or Panama, or places that have been in the vacation tourism market for longer than Belize. I would say about 15 years ago, Belize Tourism Board has started putting a lot more money and efforts into branding Belize, just to make it more well known to the average traveler. I'd say it was really quite well known to adventure vacation travelers or divers or fishermen who wanted to go off the grid, off the beaten path and try something different and away from the crowds. And now at this point, I'd say 15 years later, we are starting to see a lot more of the average vacationer coming down here to Belize. We're seeing more families. We're seeing grandparents who are taking all their grandkids on vacation. We're seeing honeymooners. We're seeing couples. We're seeing people who are taking their 1-year trip down here to Belize, and then they continue to come back every year. But I think it is such an interesting country, and you've been here for 12 years and I've just watched the country grow. And I think, for me, what was the most interesting was when I heard about Belize in 2012, I had no idea where it was, right? And when I told my friends I was going to Belize or sending them pictures from the hotel and showing them the beautiful waters, they're like, "Are you in Mexico? Where are you?" I told them Belize. I had no idea where that was. Now, 12 years later, like, "Hey, when can we come down and visit you? Belize looks awesome." And that's because they, as the average traveler, are learning more and more about the country. And so what we're seeing, you'll see 3 new flights that are added direct. Mark, I mentioned Baltimore to you, but Baltimore is direct on JetBlue. Also, New York City is a new direct flight. And then United just announced that they're going to be doing direct from San Francisco as well. Now, this isn't a comprehensive list of all of the places and all the directs coming into the country, but it is a good indicator of the growth of the country that's happening right now. Now, I'd say Belize is truly at the sweet spot of the real estate investment market. And the reason that I say that is because prices haven't really plateaued or gotten so high that they've stopped, like we've seen in places like Costa Rica or Panama. And it still has opportunities for appreciation. So it's still affordable enough, still appreciation here. And that is just going to get opportunities to get smaller and smaller and smaller as more people find out about Belize, because what that means is the opportunities are going to get gobbled up, prices are going to go up. But right now we're really still at that sweet spot in the market. And what I think is going to be an absolute game changer for this country is when there's a direct flight from Europe. Now, that hasn't happened yet. There were talks before COVID, and then I heard that Air France has recently restarted the conversations. But right now, I think that it is still an incredible opportunity buy to be coming into Belize, whether you're looking for investment property, you're looking to relocate here, you're looking, buy now, sell later, buy now, live here later. A lot of potential here within the country. So Belize is a really interesting country because English is the official language. So let's just take a step back here. So Belize is in Central America. It's the only country in Central America that it has English as the official language. Now you're still going to hear Spanish, you're going to hear Creole. In fact, you'll hear all three of them spoken in the same sentences at some points, but English is the official language. And I'd say this is really one of the big reasons that we do tend to see of a lot of investors and people coming down to own real estate here is because they're able to review the paperwork. They're able to read HOA documents. They're able to know what their neighbor is saying to them, or when they're coming through customs and immigration, what questions are being asked to them. And it just makes that level of comfort so much greater because you're able to have conversations in the language that you're comfortable in. Population-wise, we're at about 400,000, which is small, right? Size-wise, at the size of Massachusetts, population's about 400,000. And I like to put this into perspective too. So Belize is the second smallest country in Central America, right under where it says new over here, that's El Salvador. And El Salvador is actually the first smallest country in Central America, but their population is over 6 million people. So when you look at Belize right over here, a little bit larger in size, but population is about 400,000. What you tend to find is that Belize is comprised of a lot of little villages. Infrastructure, as a result of the small population, is not great. It's always getting better. And as more tourists come in, as there's more money coming into the country, we do see a lot of improvements that are happening. But just keep that in the back of your mind as you are traveling to Belize and coming down. It's a small country, but even smaller population. So the resources are not necessarily there when you compare it to places that have a much larger population. And then currency, we are pegged to the US dollar. It's $1 to 2 Belize dollars. So whenever you're in the grocery store and you see, let's say, a bag of Tostitos of $16, that's 16 Belize dollars, cut that in half, and then it's about $8 US. You will tend to find that imported items are a lot more expensive than items that are produced here in the country or a little bit more locally. You'll find local products do tend to be more affordable. So keep that in the back of your mind. But I do want to note that all of the prices in the presentation here are going to be in US dollars. So unless otherwise noted, it is all going to be in US dollars. And you do tend to find that real estate is priced in US dollars, and most transactions are happening in US dollars, unless you're typically dealing with a local to local situation. And in that case, you're in Belize dollars. But you don't have to worry about doing any currency conversion or anything along those lines. It will all be done in US dollars. So the three parts of what we're going to be doing today is the first part, we're going to go through mistakes to avoid. And this is what I've seen a handful of foreigners, the mistakes that a handful of foreigners are making. And then we're going to be giving you tips of what to do instead. I'm going to share with you the top 3 questions to ask your real estate agent, and then what answers to look out for. And then part 3, we're going to go through the market a little bit more and then highlight some noteworthy opportunities to you. All right, so the most common mistake that I see people making is that they're watching either a lot of YouTube videos or they're reading an article that says, like, this is the best thing, this is what you need to do. And real estate here in Belize is really not a one-size-fits-all sort of product. There are many different products. There are many different locations here in Belize. There are many different ways that you can title your property here in Belize. And what one person may be saying to you may not necessarily be the best thing for your situation or for your circumstance. So what I would highly recommend is that if you are working with a real estate agent, talk to them, let them know what your goals and interests are, and be serious about it. I know sometimes we're a little tight-lipped, we don't want to share everything, but if you're working with the right real estate agent, then they're going to be on the same team as you. They're going to be looking for the opportunities that best fit what you're looking for. And the reason that I tell you this is because financing is not common here in Belize. And if you're a little tight-lipped about what you're looking for and if you need financing or not, you may be looking at the wrong properties for so long because it may not be offering financing. So remember that what you're hearing, and especially from other expats, tends to be their experience. It's not necessarily written in stone. It's not necessarily concrete. So the best thing you can do is just be open about what you're looking to accomplish with your agent and then seeing what they suggest for you. Now, this is my favorite. Remember that Belize is not North America or wherever your home country is. And we are in a developing country here. Like I was saying to you before, infrastructure is still improving. Well, one of the things that I get the most joy from, and that is sheer sarcasm, is going to the bank here in Belize. Because when you go to the bank, whether you want to open a bank account or you need to open an online profile or you want to get access to your online banking, you have to physically go into the bank. You can't set appointments. You want to make sure you get there nice and early because a long line tends to form. And then you are there until the customer service rep has time to go through all of the people in front of you and you're next. And the other day, this was maybe about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in the bank opening up a bank account for one of the companies that were opening. And I mean, I was probably at the bank for about 2 hours waiting at that point. And I was sitting with this customer service rep for about an hour and a half at this point. Again, so I just planned to dedicate the entire day at the bank. And an American guy walks in. And remember, at the bank, there's always lines, right? There's always lines. There are people waiting outside. And this guy storms into the bank and he demands to talk to a teller. And I can tell from his accent that he was from the Northeast. I'm from New York, so I can tell from his accent he was from the Northeast. And he was saying, my debit card isn't working. Somebody needs to fix this right now. Why is my debit card not working? And we could hear the whole conversation in the bank because this guy is livid and he's screaming. And the banker, the teller's like, sir, like, we're not a Citibank, we're Atlantic Bank. We can't help you. You have to call your bank and see. And then he's like, well, what's your Wi-Fi password? Well, at the bank, they don't have public Wi-Fi. It's not open Wi-Fi. So they said they don't have Wi-Fi. So they started screaming about that. And I'm just over there like, shaking my head like this. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is why Americans have a bad name. But again, it's just packing your patience with some of the best advice that I was ever given when I moved here. And expect to stand on lines, bring books with you, bring your phone so you can do some emails as you're waiting for things. But things here take time. And pertaining to real estate, I want to mention that titling takes time. So after you purchase real estate here, and I'm going to go through the closing process in a little bit more detail, but when you're going through that closing process and you submit all of your documents, the closing company will submit all of your paperwork to the lands department. At that point, when it's all submitted, you're technically considered closed, but you don't have your physical title, your physical piece of paper for about another 12, 18 months. And I was just on the phone with someone a couple of days ago who's looking to sell her land. And she's like, and I finally got my title after a year and a half. And I was so angry. I was like, well, did the original real estate agent that you're working with tell you that it's going to take that long? And she said no. And so if we're going in with the right expectations, we're understanding what the process is, it just makes things so much easier. But things like getting a hotel license, if you want to open up an Airbnb, you need to go through the process of getting a hotel license to be able to operate as an Airbnb. And depending where in the country you are purchasing your property, if you're here on the islands, it could take a year to get that hotel license. If you're in a more remote place, it could take a little bit less time because there's not as much going on there. So again, things just take time. There's no MLS, a lot of things to consider, but just come in with that open mind and you'll at least be a little bit more relaxed, or at least know what to expect. All right, number 3 here of common mistakes to avoid is avoid the rum punch special. And here, what I mean by that is you take your time, you do your due diligence. Google is probably going to be one of your best friends here. Get to know who you're working with. Do a simple Google search, right? A simple Google search of your real estate agent, a simple Google search of the developer, of the contractor. Ask around, get references. That's one of the best things that you can do here because in Belize, it is a fairly unregulated market. Now, typically you'll be, hopefully you met a right person right here, but let's say you're talking to other folks, like you can Google them, you can see more about them online. One of the biggest things that I recommend when you're working with a real estate agent is get to know how much time they've been living in the country, if they're an expat, and if they personally bought property and invested, and where it is that they've invested. To me, that is such an incredible indicator of the experience that your agent has. But again, take your time. I think that there's always going to be great opportunities. Now, prices, of course, are going up, so prices may be a little bit more, but at least you have that peace of mind of knowing that what it is that you're purchasing. and do your due diligence. And the reason that I say this is I think sometimes when people come down to Belize, you know, they get this rum punch special and then they get the margarita madness in them, is they hear something from the guy that they're sitting next to at the bar about real estate. And then next thing we know, the next day they're going to go look at this property with this guy that they met at the bar. And then that day, that afternoon, they're signing papers and they're purchasing that property. Well, in many cases in our home country, we wouldn't be doing that. We wouldn't be going so quickly, full steam ahead. There are certain things that you can do during that closing process to ensure that you are buying a legitimate property. So again, take your time, do your due diligence. I have a whole list of questions that you can ask in our resource that I'm going to mention at the end, but these are all things that are really important. All right, everyone, find that Q&A section of your control panel there. We're going to get ready to type because I have a bonus here. So I'll give you just a couple of seconds to find that Q&A, get ready to type out. And the first person who types the correct answer is going to get sent a bottle of Marie Sharp's hot sauce. It is some of the best hot sauce in the world. It adds just a little bit of spicy kick to your food without losing the flavor of the food, of the dish. And all right, here's the bonus. I'm gonna pull up my Q&A so that I can see who types this first. All right, here we go. What animal is on the right-hand side of this page? What animal is on the right-hand side of this page? All right, Brian Smiley, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It is indeed correct. It is a tapir. So Brian, if you don't mind, I'm gonna just screenshot your name there, but if you don't mind, send me an email. You can just reply to the email address that you got the registration link from with your address, and I'm going to mail you a bottle of hot sauce, Marie Sharp's hot sauce, some of the best in the world. I see some people said anteater. You're close, but it is indeed the tapir. So the tapir is it's a goofy looking animal, but it is the national animal of Belize, and it's often referred to as the mountain cow. And fun fact, if you ever are spending time here in Belize and you can go to the Belize Zoo, the Belize Zoo is an incredible place to visit. It is all animals that are native to Belize, and they typically ended up there in the zoo because they were injured at some point, or they were born in the zoo and they're not releasing them out to the wild because they're not ready for that. They're not prepared for that. So you can see the tapir in the Belize Zoo. As you're driving through Belize, you'll actually see some signs on the side of the road that say slow down or caution tapir crossing. I've never seen one out in the wild before, but this is what they look like. So keep your eye open. I know it's a goofy looking guy, but that is indeed the tapir. So thank you everybody for participating there. All right, part 2 is top questions to ask. Top questions to ask. And these would be questions that you're asking to your real estate agent. And then I'm going to give you a prep of what sort of answers that you should be looking out for. So these are the top 3 questions. What does the closing process look like and what are the costs? As a foreigner, is financing available to me? And then question number 3 is, can you show me properties that aren't listed by you? So I know there's a lot of information on the screen, so bear with me. Again, we're recording this, so you'll be able to get a copy of the recording. I also have a whole version of this document in a more drawn out overview, so you can get all of the details there at once. But we're gonna go through the closing process, and this is specifically for resales. If you are looking at a property here that is a pre-construction or under construction, that closing process is going to be different. This is specifically for resale property, whether it's a lot, whether it's a home or a condo that's already owned by someone, and then they're selling it. And that's typically what you'll find with most listings online, is that it is a resale property. So this is very general, but I want to go through the 2 parts with you. So what does the closing process look like? So when you find a property that you like, you and your real estate agent will come up with some sort of offer to the seller. So you'll put that in an offer to purchase letter, an OTP. In that OTP, you'll sign off on it, and then the agent is going to send it off to the seller's agent. And as long as everything looks good, the seller's agent will sign off on it as well as the seller, and then you will get a copy of that countersigned document back. Your real estate agent typically has a closing company that they have worked with before or that they would highly suggest to you. If you want to go off and do your own research and find a different attorney or real estate closing company, you can do that. I would suggest just working with the one that your realtor suggests, because chances are they've had many successful closes with them in the past. But what they'll do at that point, once there's a countersigned document, they'll introduce you to the closing company. And that closing company is going to be who is doing that real estate close for you, who's doing that title transfer for you. So during the first part of the close, there's a due diligence and contingency period. And so due diligence that they're doing is a title check or a company check. If you're buying a property, they're going to check to make sure that whatever name is on that title is what matches in the purchase agreement or in the offer to purchase letter. Those two do need to match. They'll also do a title check to make sure that the company is free or the property is free and clear of liens, no charges on it. And they'll typically send you back a report, and typically takes about a week or two, and they'll say, yes, this is a clean property, everything looks good. Also, during this part one is when you have your contingencies checked, right? So typically contingencies can include a land survey. If you're buying a parcel of land or a house on land, you'll do a home inspection. And then you can even include a visit to Belize if you haven't been here before. I know not many sellers are willing to have that span out over months, right? If you can typically make it happen within a week or two, then that's a good timeline. But I'd say anything much longer than 2 or 3 weeks, they typically will not accept. But with that being said, you're going to go through the contingencies. It typically takes about 2 to 3 weeks to get in touch with a land surveyor here. There are only a few in the country that are actually certified and approved. So it does take a little bit of time to get them to your land. So you want to coordinate that as soon as you can. And typically your real estate agent will do this for you. In addition to that, your home inspection, if you're buying a property that's already constructed, your real estate agent will tend to do this for you. If you want the home inspection, these are things, again, that I would recommend doing. But also note that in Belize, when you get the inspection report back, the seller is typically, we'd say it's not as common for a seller to fix things that aren't hazardous or preventing the property from being rented. So if it's like a cracked tile in the kitchen, they typically wouldn't replace it. If it's a door that, you know, the laminate is peeling off on a sliding glass door, typically not going to be replacing it. But this is where you would talk to your real estate agent to see what they think would be likely. Now, you'll want to make sure that you're having that conversation as soon as you get the inspection report back, because you are going to want to submit anything that you want changed. And if for some reason the seller is not willing to accept it, then at that point you can get your deposit back. And I meant to mention that it's a 10% deposit that you're putting in once your offer to purchase is received into the escrow company of the title company or the closing company. All right, so that timeline for that first part typically takes about 3 to 4 weeks. Once you move on to part two, your 10% deposit that you put in during part one becomes non-refundable. All right, and during part two, this is when the closing company is doing the document preparation for you. They're going to be preparing the paperwork that they call the deed of conveyance. That's the title transfer paperwork. Or if you're buying a company that holds the asset of the land, then it'll be a shared transfer form. Typically, wet signatures are required, especially for deed of conveyances. Share transfer depends entirely on where that company is based. But for a deed of conveyance, if it's a title transfer from one person to another, they'll need your wet signature, and typically in front of a notary. You do not need to physically be here in person to close. In fact, it's not recommended to even come down until afterwards, because everything will be mailed to your home, and then you'll be mailing it to the next party. And then at this time too, the company is preparing a closing statement, and then the balance of what you agreed upon typically goes into escrow about 1 week before closing. So this is about 3 to 4 weeks. So this entire process, the closing process, takes about, I'd say, 6 to 8 weeks in total. Can happen quicker, can happen longer than that. I'd say more often than not, closes get delayed by a few weeks, because when it comes to mailing documents and going to a notary, things just get in the way and life happens. But nothing wrong if it extends a little bit. But your real estate agent typically puts that in your offer to purchase. And then costs. So closing costs are not included in the listing price. And I want to make sure that this is super clear, because you'll need to allocate about an additional 10%, about 10% for closing costs. And 8% is a stamp tax, which is a government title transfer fee. And then about 2%, which is an attorney fee or closing company fee. So about 10%, if you're buying a company and that company has the asset of the land and the title is not ever being transferred, it's staying in the name of that company, but you're buying the shares of the company, then that's about 2%. But I always tell clients, estimate about 10%. And if it's less than that, fantastic. But 10% is really what you should be adding. Again, I know this is a lot of information. I have it all written out. I'm going to give you a recording of this. I just want to give you a quick overview of what to expect during that closing process. All right, this is the next question we get all the time. As a foreigner, is financing available? And we just got off the phone with a lady who's like, all right, I can put like 20% down. And then what banking institutions can I get the other 80% from? Not great news for you, but I'll tell you the reality is Belize is primarily a cash market. Belize is primarily a cash market. So you tend to find that the higher priced real estate, 700,000 plus, is probably going to be staying on the market for a little bit longer than things less than that, because people are primarily coming in with cash and purchasing. Now, with that being said, there are some financing options. The first one, and this is the route that people prefer over a bank, is looking for opportunities that are offering seller financing. However, only about 20 to 25% of the sellers who are selling actually are considering seller financing. Some people need the cash and they're not willing to have that drawn out over a period of time. If you are a seller, I think this is probably one of the best ways to do it, because 8% interest over a short term, and that's a pretty darn good investment. But what you're looking at here, typically, if it's seller financing, these are standard terms, average terms. There are some that are longer than this, but I just want to share the average right now. 50% down, 8% interest, a 3-year term. So as you're looking at that, what you'll probably realize is that your monthly payments are going to be a lot heavier than if it was a 20 or a 30-year term. So we have a loan mortgage calculator where we can run numbers and do all of that, but just go in with this expectation. Again, there are some opportunities that are longer than this, but typically this is what you'd expect is 50% down, 8% interest, 3-year term. And also note that the title isn't transferred until the seller receives payment in full. And typically what happens is if you don't pay after about 30 to 45 days, then you default and the seller gets the property back and keeps the amount that was already given to them. So just be aware of that. The other option is with Key International Bank. They are located in San Pedro. You do need to have a bank account with them. They have a monthly fee of about $14.50. There's a loan origination fee and there's a charge fee. Because the property is being financed, they'll put a charge, which is essentially a lien against the property, and then you will be the one paying for that. Now, as of today, the terms are 50% down, 11% interest, 10-year term, but there are typically a lot of fees associated with financing with a bank. So yes, there's a little bit more security, but it takes a little bit longer and it is more expensive. And there's also no guarantee they'll approve you. So just some things, again, to keep in the back of your mind, but otherwise do expect for it to be primarily a cash market. And then last but not least, I would always recommend that you ask the listing agent or the agent that you're working with if they can show you properties that aren't specifically listed by them. And I tell you this, the market has gotten a lot better, I would say recently, where agents are more willing to collaborate. But I would say 5, 7, 10 years ago, this was not necessarily the case. And because we do not have an MLS here, it's not necessarily like all agents know what's on the market, right? So you want to make sure that you're working with somebody who's knowledgeable in the market and who should be saying yes to you when you ask if they can be showing you properties that are not listed by them specifically. Really important to ask this. I think that sometimes people think that they have to work with each listing agent, and that may not necessarily be the best case. The best thing may be to work with a buyer's agent. And here, I know this is a funny topic, but I know that the whole thing with NAR and then the commissions and everything here in Belize, it's the seller's responsibility to be paying both agents. So even if you have a buyer's representative, you don't have to worry about paying them because that is taken out from the seller side. So just a heads up there. But yes, ask this question. You want to make sure that they're saying yes, because I know there are a couple of real estate companies here that work exclusively for developments. So they can only show you the development that they are listing. All right, we are really getting through a lot of information here. We're at about that 30-minute mark. So I do expect for us to be here for about another 30 minutes, but we're going to go through questions and answers too at the end. So make sure you are typing any questions there into the Q&A section. All right, let's go through part 3. This is the Belize real estate market. So these are some benefits why we're seeing people are deciding to own real estate in Belize. One of the biggest ones is that there's zero capital gains tax. And as a result of zero capital gains tax, we see a lot of people who are looking to land bank here in Belize. And this is zero capital gains tax in Belize. What it is in your home country, you'll have to get that part figured out with your accountant or your CPA. But here in Belize, if you buy property today for $50,000, You sell it for $75,000 in a few years, there's $0 that you have to pay to Belize on that $25,000 gain. In addition to that, rental income is low. It's 1.75% that is taxed here in Belize. And then you can tell the amount that you pay here in taxes to your accountant in the States, and they can typically put that towards the taxes that you'd be owed in the States. Again, I know every country is different, so I'm not going to get into those specifics, but here in Belize, it's 1.75%. In addition to that, property taxes are really quite low. So for an average parcel, say about 1/4 of an acre, you're typically paying on the island here in San Pedro, typically paying about 75 to 100 US dollars a year. Now, property bigger than that, obviously you're going to be paying more. If you're in more remote areas of Belize, I know we have a client who has a few acres on a river and she pays about $10 US a year. So very minimal, but it'll just depend on where in the country you are. Unfortunately, there's not really a real formula to property taxes. It's just the value of the unassessed land or the undeveloped land. So whatever the land value is, it doesn't matter what's built on it. That's how property taxes are pretty much assessed, but again, not a real formula. Now, also, you as a foreigner receive title to your property. So there are two types of titles here, strata and freehold. Both of them are, or fee simple rather, strata and fee simple. Both of them are awesome. It means that you own the property is yours, it can't be taken away from you. So you just want to be double checking that you're getting one of those two and you'll be set. And then the other one is if you're an American and you have an IRA, you're able to use your IRA funds in the form of a self-directed IRA, as long as that self-directed IRA has a company and then that company can own the property. Don't need to get into the nitty gritty. This is really just more of an overview. And if you have any specific questions, feel free to reach out to us and we can get you those details. So as I mentioned, Belize is about the size of Massachusetts. So small country, population, like we said, about 400,000, but there are a lot of different areas of the country. And sometimes people come to us and like, all right, we're interested in Belize, we're ready to move. All right, well, where in Belize do you want to go? I don't know, where should I go? Well, what do you like doing? Do you want to be by the ocean? Do you like fishing? Do you like diving? Is it important for you to be gardening? Do you want to have a car? Are you fine walking or biking? A lot of things that are important for you to recognize and understand. And if you haven't been down here to Belize yet, what I would recommend is sitting there after the presentation here and making a list of what's important for you when it comes to your lifestyle. Because if it's really, really, really critical that you're within walking distance to a supermarket, that's going to limit a lot of the places that you're looking. Or is it really important that there's X denomination church nearby? Or is it really important that you can access it by car? Right? These things really do get important, but it is a very vast country. Like I mentioned, small populations, so you do tend to find a lot of little villages throughout the country, really authentic little villages. The country's safe as well. I always recommend if you're planning to spend time here and be on the mainland, rent a car and drive. There aren't really that many highways. It's a little hard to get lost. Google Maps works though, but it's a really, really beautiful country. And the one thing I will caution you about is the sleeping policemen, aka the speed bumps. There are just tons of speed bumps in this country and potholes. And, you'll tend to find that people are driving on both sides of the road to avoid the potholes or to avoid something that's in the road. And so you'll just want to be cautious there, but otherwise it's a very safe country for you to be driving in. So Ambergris Caye, we're going to be talking about Ambergris Caye, Corozal, Cayo District, Placencia, and Hopkins as well. These are the areas that we're going to be focusing in on a bit. But I do want to just point out too that Belize City is right here. The international airport, there's only one in the entire country. So you'll be flying in, it's Ladyville, but we'll say Belize City for the sake of this conversation. You'll be flying in right over here. And then once you get into Belize City, then you'll be transporting out to wherever it is you need to go. Now, most people don't tend to stay in Belize City. There's not terribly a lot going on. We tend to do our furniture shopping there. Or if we need to do a big grocery shopping or something along those lines, maybe we'll go to Belize City for that. They have some pretty good medical care as well in Belize City. That we'll go to if we need, but otherwise it's not necessarily like we're hanging out in the city regularly, but you'll typically get into the city and then go to your destination. And fun fact is that there is a second blue hole here in Belize, and it is located right outside Belmopan. And that's the one that you see over here. This is a natural pool or a natural pond. And it's a little chilly. It's nice and fresh when you go into it, but It really is a stunning stopover if you are making your way from Belmopan down the Hummingbird Highway. All right, so here are the six areas that I really wanted to focus in on with you. And I know there's a lot of information here, so do try to tune in and listen, and don't let your eyes deviate too much. But I want to just highlight these areas because this is where we tend to see a lot of the people who are coming to Belize are purchasing. So Corozal, it's that burgundy pin on the top part of the country here. This is a popular area for, I would say, retirees or people who want to be close to the Mexican border. As I mentioned, healthcare is okay in Belize. Mexico, the healthcare is really quite good. So you're able to just cross over the border, be there within 15 minutes, and be in Chetumal, which is the bordering town to Mexico. Belize and Mexico have a very great relationship, very, very good relationship. So you're able to just hop over the border in 15 minutes, and then you're there in Mexico. Also, people tend to like to be closer to the border because of access. If they want to go to Sam's Club or Home Depot or whatever it ends up being, then they can typically do that pretty quickly. Now from Ambergris Caye, you're actually able to fly to Corozal and be there within 15 minutes. So it's not that far of a distance either to Mexico if you are here on the Keys. So the two keys that I want to mention, Ambergris Caye, it's the light orange, and then light green here is Caye Caulker. These two are considered sister keys, but they are incredibly different. Ambergris Caye is the largest island. Caye means, as you probably guessed, island. And Ambergris is the largest key, the largest island off of the coast of Belize mainland. It's also the hub for Belize tourism because we parallel the reef. Caye Caulker, it's the sister island to Ambergris. It's a lot quieter. It's much smaller. It's more of a quiet fishing village. I would say you tend to find more backpackers here, but typically you'll find that these two keys do attract a lot of people who are coming out for the water sports. I would say Ambergris Caye, how I refer to it, it's like the Key West of Belize. It's charming, it's colorful. We drive golf carts here. Everyone's friendly and waves to each other. A lot of colors. I think I mentioned that. A lot of colors here. And it's just a very friendly, warm, open environment. So that's typically what you'll find in the Keys. Ambergris has, I'd say, the largest expat population of the entire country here. And also it's the most popular tourism destination. So we do tend to have more resources, I would say, put towards Ambergris Caye, more options, more variety there as well. Now, Cayo is where you see that dark green pin right over here. Cayo, it's a really stunning, beautiful area. Think more jungles, farmland, agricultural land, rich, fertile soil. You see rivers here. And it's really perfect, I would say, for somebody who wants to be closer to nature and wildlife. And I would say that Cayo district is where you can find large acreage for very affordable prices. If you're looking at large acreage in places like the Keys where land is finite, then you're typically going to be paying a premium. But if you want to have a farm or you want to have large gardens, then Cayo district could be that right place for you. Next is Hopkins. This is an area that I would say it's up and coming. It's a beachfront area, small population, about 4,000 to 5,000 people, but it's known for the Garifuna influence, which it's a really beautiful, beautiful culture. And then also river properties. And then last but not least is Placencia. That's the dark blue pin that you see there on the screen. And how I refer to Placencia, it's like the Hamptons of Belize. This is where you tend to find larger single family homes. You tend to find marinas for bigger boats here. You know, in Ambergris, we're so close to the reef and so many areas coming into this island are shallow. So there's only a limited size boat that you can bring here to the island. So if you're a boater and it's really important for you to have your 50-foot yacht with you, well, you'll probably want to end up in Placencia versus the other areas because that's the area that'll be able to accommodate you best. I'm going to just jump back up to Corozal for a second. I would say Corozal is probably the most affordable option. If you're really looking to stretch your dollars, Corozal is probably where you want to be because it is very close to Mexico. So you are able to bring things in from Mexico. You still have to pay customs and duties, but it doesn't have to transfer all the way to the other parts of the country. The Keys, Ambergris, Caye Caulker, and Placencia tend to be the most expensive. The Keys, understandably so, because you're bringing things out, you're shipping things out to an island, and then Placencia just because of the demographic and how it's grown. Now I want to go through some numbers. Again, I know there's a lot on the screen here, but you can take a screenshot or you'll be able to get a copy of the recording after this. But like we talked about, Corozal is the most affordable, not just for your daily living and groceries, but also for long-term rent to buy a property there. I put averages here for 2 bedrooms, and please note these are in US dollars and these are absolutely completely average. They can be much lower than this. They can be much higher than this. This is just the average of what's out there today. If you're looking in the Corozal district, average long-term rent, and again, it's July 9, 2024. So if you're listening to this in 6 months or 12 months or 2 years, prices could be different. But average 2-bedroom long-term rental in Corozal, you're looking at about $600 US. Average 2-bedroom homes about $300,000 US. And then there aren't really condos in Corozal. There's only one development that I know of that is doing it, but typically there are no condos in Corozal. Ambergris Caye, where you see that yellowish, I'd say light orange pin. This does tend to be more expensive. Again, you're on an island. This is where the most demand is. Long-term rent for a 2-bedroom, about $1,700 a month. And then 2-bedroom home at a little over $450, and then a 2-bedroom condo at about $440. Again, all in US dollars. Cayo district, 2-bedroom rental about $850, 2-bedroom home about $315. They don't have condos there in Cayo. Maybe a couple of projects, but none that really I'd say fit the bill for this presentation. Hopkins, long-term rental about $900, 2-bedroom home about $495, and then 3-bedroom condo about $390. Placencia here, again, it tends to be a little bit more expensive, but you're looking at about $1,900. Average 2-bedroom home is about $648. Average 2-bedroom condo is about $425. Again, just average, but just to give you an idea of prices based on the location. Now, obviously, there's a lot to consider when you're looking at properties and what those prices look like, especially if you're looking at a rental, right? Oops, let me go back here for a second. If you're looking at the rentals here, or you're in purchasing a home, it's not comparing apples to apples in a lot of cases. You have to remember that a lot of foreigner standards are not necessarily going to be the same as local standards. If you are somebody who wants hot water in your home, if you're somebody who wants air conditioning units in your home, if you're someone who wants a home that's built to hurricane standards, you're typically going to be paying more than the average. So just note that it's important because not all properties are created equally. It's not just like that here in Belize, but everywhere in the world. So considerations, accessibility and location. Accessibility, how easy is it to get there? Is the road paved? Location, is it close to the beach? Is it close to the hardware store? Is it close to the grocery store? Are you going to need a car? Are you going to need a golf cart? These are all things that are very important. Understanding when the property was constructed and how it was constructed, what building materials were used, because again, we know not all properties are built equally, so you want to ensure that it's built to the standards that you're looking for when you're purchasing. Also, when it comes to numbers, please note that off-grid homes tend to be more expensive on a price per square foot than homes that are not off-grid. Because when you have an off-grid home, you essentially have your own utility company. You have your own septic, you have your own water, and you have your own power. And in order to get those three things, you're going to be paying more than somebody who's just going to be hooking up to the grid. So it makes me laugh when people do the price per square foot for an off-grid home, because you just simply cannot do that and get an accurate number. But I would say that expect for an off-grid property to be more than something that's connected to the grid. Also, access to utilities, what we're talking about, is it connected to the grid? Do you have access? If you're looking at like a lot, for example, property, do you have access to utilities? In addition to that, in the area that you're purchasing or renting, what sort of amenities are there? Is it within a planned development? Typically, if it's within a planned development or a condo complex, you're going to have additional fees, but it typically means maintenance is all done for you. It's all cared for. So you don't have to worry about that or think about that monthly payments. Maybe there are pools that need to be maintained. What amenities are there? Is there a gym? All of these things increase the value of a property. And in addition to that, just generally what's included. Is it coming fully furnished? Is it not coming fully furnished? That is a question that is important to ask. A lot of times in a vacation rental market, when people own property here, they're going to be selling it turnkey as is. However, if somebody's living there full time and it's not necessarily a rental for them, they'll probably be taking stuff with them. So sometimes prices include all the furniture, which can get very pricey, and sometimes it doesn't. So again, just some considerations. So there are two districts, two areas that I'm going to be focusing in on when I share some and highlight some opportunities for you. One is the Cayo district and the other is San Pedro. I know there are a lot of numbers here on the screen, so let me explain. This is a report that was produced by the Belize Tourism Board. You can go to their website, you can go to the statistics, and you can check to see a bunch of different things that they record. So when you come into the country and you have to fill out a form, like how long you're going to be here for, where are you going, what's the address of where you're going, they take all of that information and consolidate it into numbers like this. And so you'll see here at the bottom, I might not have captured it all, but they typically say that it doesn't necessarily, it's not 100% accurate because people go to various destinations, but it gives you a very good estimate. So these are the numbers from 2023 of the estimated visitors who came into the country and where it is that they went. So you can see when you look at the bottom line here, the yellow line, San Pedro, Ambergris Caye. San Pedro is the primary town, Ambergris Caye is the island. We tend to use the word synonymously. I'm telling you that because some people have said, I'm going to go visit San Pedro, but I don't want to go to Ambergris Caye. I'm like, well, it's kind of one and the same. It's very similar. But again, San Pedro, Ambergris Caye. So San Pedro is seeing, Ambergris Caye generally, the island is seeing the largest number of tourists at 128,000 in 2023. Cayo district saw about 66,000, again, just from 2023. And when you look at the bottom numbers there, you can see that these are the top 2 destinations in the entire country. So these are the 2 that I'm going to be focusing on. Cayo district to me is one of the most fascinating places in the entire country, especially when it comes to tourism, because you compare numbers from 2019, 2020, the number of tourists going here were very low compared to what they are today. And I think what I've seen is that actually this number has gone up quite a bit since COVID, because people were going to Belize, wanting land, wanting farmland, wanting to be self-sustainable, and they end up in the Cayo district because it's perfect for that. But anyway, with that being said, we can look at what the 2024 numbers are so far. I think they're on Belize time with getting the rest of the months to us, because this was pulled yesterday. And we can see here that it only goes up through March. But Cayo district at 26,000, and then San Pedro at 47,000 just for the first quarter of 2024 visitors coming into the country. So again, we can still see that San Pedro and Cayo, the Cayo district, are taking the lead for the number of travelers. Now, I was talking to somebody a little bit before this call. Her name is also Rachel, and she was saying she wants to start a business and she wants to go where the tourists are. So you can easily go to Belize Tourism Board, type this in, go to statistics, and see very clearly and simply where the tourists are going. So if you're looking for a rental property, you want to go where the tourists are going. If you're looking for maybe some more land, or you're looking to land bank and you know prices are going up because the number of people going there, you may want to be looking at Cayo district. So the Cayo district, this is for the entire district. It's the most western district in the country. Population of the entire district is about 100,000. The primary towns that you'll see here are San Ignacio, Santa Elena, Spanish Lookout, San Antonio, and Belmopan. Belmopan, I'm going to mention, that's the capital of the country. It's where you have the U.S. Embassy. It's where you have immigration office, a lot here in Belmopan, so it's very convenient. Now, the other one that I think is interesting is Spanish Lookout. This is the biggest Mennonite town in Belize, and this is where you tend to find a lot of hardware stores. You tend to find the glass shops, where the roof stores. You tend to find a lot of fresh dairy and produce. The Mennonites really run the produce industry here. So this district has some of the best fruits and poultry that I have ever tasted, the absolute freshest. Here in the Cayo district, you'll also see a lot of the Mayan ruins, rivers, cave tubing, hiking. That's typically what you'll find in the Cayo district. And if you're out there, make sure you check the ATM caves. ATM caves are caves that you can walk through, essentially wade through and climb up on rocks and see some old Mayan artifacts. It used to be a cave where they did Mayan sacrifices. So you can still see pieces of pottery. There's skulls in there. It's really, really fascinating. Great history lesson. I'd say it's more ideal towards more of the adventure traveler. If you're more of a beach person and you don't really want to be doing much, this might be a little bit much for you. But if you're looking for some adventure, it could be awesome. All right, so let me go through a couple of insider opportunities. This one is at Carmelita Gardens. Carmelita is a property that has been opened or started in 2010. It's an off-grid master plan community in the Cayo district. It's actually one of the only master plan communities in Cayo. So if you're somebody who is looking to be in a place that's thought out, where there is actually zoning, because in the rest of the country, we don't have that. And there's also no build timeline requirements. So what we're seeing a lot of people are doing here is picking up lots, holding on to it for the future, whether they want to build on it or maybe sell it down the line. The developer, I just met up with the developer a couple of days ago, and he is doing some special financing on lots. There's green lots and also river lots. It's located on a river, the Belize River, and just really, really fertile soil, rich, perfect for growing and gardening. So if you're somebody who's just looking to land bank or get your foot in the door, you may want to be looking at the green garden lots. They started under 40,000 and he is doing 80% financing, 8-year term, 8% interest. So you only need about 7,800 to get started to get property here in Belize. As you see opportunities, if you are interested in them, just email us. You see the email address there at the bottom, info@lunarealtybelize.com. And then I put here a number, and then just email us with that number and we'll know what to send over to you if this is something you're interested in. But again, it's an off-grid master plan community. It is just a really beautiful place in the country and very conveniently located to 2 big towns in the country. Another opportunity that I wanted to mention to you is a brand new, fully furnished. I'm mentioning the furniture because it is really top-notch and beautiful in that Spanish Lookout area. So we mentioned that Spanish Lookout is a popular Mennonite area, and tons of other folks who are living there as well and tend to want acreage. You can find some nice acreage in this area. This is on almost 2 acres of land, and they do have mature fruit trees and plants already growing. And this seller has really thought out the home. It's very well thought out. It's high end. She's put in a lot of high end finishes to it. It's brand new. It's never been lived in, and it comes, as we mentioned, fully furnished there. So this one she's offering for 303. And then there's an adjoining jungle lot that can be purchased separately or in addition to this as well. And then the third opportunity that I wanted to mention to you, it is an off-grid riverfront home, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom. And what I think is really unique about this property is that they purchased the lots on each side of the property, and these owners started growing their own gardens. They have tropical fruits that are already mature. You have plantain trees, limes. They're selling the adjoining garden lots for 65,000. But this seller would actually consider short-term financing 50% down. So it just makes it a little bit more feasible when you're looking to come in and buy something, because as we mentioned before, a lot of opportunities with financing are dependent on the seller. But also, if you do find land, typically a developer will finance land for you, but they're not going to be financing your construction. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. This is insider opportunity number 3. And then we're going to focus on Ambergris Caye for a couple of minutes. This is honestly where we see a majority of investors looking, or a lot of people who want to be close to the Caribbean. It is the most, I would say, developed out of all of the country. Now, with that being said, there's still a lot of infrastructure that needs to be improved, but I would say it's certainly the area where a lot of people are gravitating towards. Population, it depends on the season. We get a lot of snowbirds coming down, but you're looking at about 50,000. Fluctuates again during high season, low season. Primary town, like we talked about, is San Pedro, but there are a lot of neighborhoods throughout Ambergris Caye as well. So you will hear other neighborhood names, and really known for the water activities because the reef parallels Ambergris Caye. It's only a 5-minute ride from the reef to land. So you are out in the water in just 5 minutes if you want to dive or snorkel or paddleboard or kayak or whatever you want to do out there in the water. And this is an area that, again, like we said, really is known for the tourism and fresh seafood for sure, because we're out there on the reef and fishing within just minutes. So if you're here, I would always recommend the whole Chan and Shark Ray Alley snorkel tour. So much fun. And then the What the Food tour. This is a great way to learn about the local cuisine and sample some different flavors of what's at the local restaurants. A couple of opportunities. This one I would say is more popular with people who are looking to land bank, want to be in the path of progress. Ambergris Caye just continues to get more expensive because there's more and more people coming. There's more of a demand, but there's not much of a supply. Being on an island has finite amount of land. So if you're somebody who just wants to land bank, not too sure what you want to do with it, but maybe hold on to it, I'd say at least hold on for about 5 years. That's where I would see the most optimal return, at least 5 years, but 5-minute drive to the Caribbean, 5-minute drive to the lagoon. And it's in the area that they're referring to as Newtown, because in San Pedro, there's just nowhere else for people to go. It's been very congested lately. So the government is moving people in the northward direction towards Newtown. So this developer, she is offering special financing, 50% down, 5-year term, 8% interest. So down, you're putting about 28,000 and monthly payments about $560 a month. You get all of this in the US. She has 5 or 6 more parcels in phase 2 if you are interested. And what I like about being in a development or being in a subdivision like this that's released in phases is when you get in early enough to the early enough phases, you know that you're going to be having that instant appreciation, because as the developer releases more lots, the prices go up. So you can think of that as instant appreciation on your property. Insider opportunity number 3 would be the Best Western Studio. This is an easy, I would say, easier entry into the market. It's very, very difficult to find properties under 200,000 on Ambergris Caye. There are a handful, but not many. And this is one where the seller is willing to do financing for 115,000. It's a Best Western studio, so branded as a Best Western. You put in the rental program if you want, or I think it's just a great property to have if you're planning to spend time here in the country and maybe don't need anything too fancy. You have a little kitchenette there. You have a beautiful veranda looking out into the gardenscape, and you're just a half a mile from town. This one's going for 115. And then this is a new construction on a canal front community, and it's a loft cottage going for 289.9. The developer will be increasing the prices in the next month. The first phase is just opening. The resort is opening. And with that opening comes a price increase for any remaining models that aren't yet constructed. So again, thinking instant appreciation, this one, you'd be able to find that there. And then you are paying for it as the construction milestones are met. So that's reassuring. And you can also do financing should you choose. This was insider opportunity number 6. Again, you have our email address there. I'm going to just go through this quickly. If you wanted to rehash and recap the numbers, number 1, it's the Carmelita Gardens lots where you can do the 80% financing. And insider opportunity number 2 is the Spanish Lookout home, fully furnished. Number 3, it's an off-grid 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom for $350. And that's on Cayo, here on Ambergris Caye. If you're looking to land bank, this is a Platinum Point lot in Newtown. You are looking at a Best Western studio, option number 5, and option number 6 is new construction. There are a lot more opportunities just depending on what it is you're looking at. So of course, reach out to us and we would love to get you the details of what is most specifically interested to you. As I mentioned, it's not a one size fits all. So I can't tell you that this is absolutely the best opportunity for you if I'm not sure what it is you're looking to accomplish. So we have a really incredible team. I think something that I'm really proud of is the group that we have here, just absolute professionals who have been in real estate for a long time with me here. And I know that you're in great hands with them when you do reach out. I would recommend that you request some of our free resources. I have 2 ones that I would definitely recommend. One of them is the must-have real estate guide for buying property overseas as a foreigner. And then the other one is a lifestyle guide if you're looking to relocate here to Belize. Considerations like shipping your items down, or the residency process. Just email us and just put resource guides and I'll send you a litany of them for you to go through. And so if you have any questions, you can always reach out to us. Our team is here and willing and able to answer all the questions that you have on your mind. And of course, we want to make sure you're doing the due diligence in order to make sure that you're buying what is right for you. You're earning what is right for you. Okay, Aaron's has a great question here. How do you find out list price to sales price ratio? How close to sales price do homes sell for an average? Fantastic question. Because of the fact that we don't have an MLS, it's very difficult to know what properties actually sell for. Now, what I will tell you from my experience is you have some sellers who are just putting a pie in the sky number and seeing if it bites. And then you have others who are so incredibly firm on their prices that they are absolutely not willing to negotiate. And typically the listing agent will know that, and your buyer's agent should be navigating you through that. But I would say 5% below the listing price, 5 to 10% below the listing price, depending on how much it is, right? I would say 10 to 10%, 5 to 10% is what I would say, more so closer to 5%, but you put the offer in and then, you don't want to do a super low ball offer. I know that we've done that for a couple just to get conversation started, and people do get offended by it. But, our goal is just to get conversation started at least, but, you also don't want to insult the seller. So I would say about 5%, Aaron, would be my best suggestion for a negotiation. And then Aaron is saying, great question here. If the average annual Belize salary is $6,600, are only Americans buying the $300,000 to $500,000 homes? Really great question. So there are, I would say, 2 different types of homes. And that's why I was mentioning before that it's very important for you to understand what it is that you're buying, because there's what North Americans are used to and then what locals are used to. And North Americans, I can tell you, they are used to their air conditioning, they're used to their hot water, they're used to their insulation in the homes, where locals are not necessarily looking for that, right? They're fine with a wooden home or a zinc home. You do tend to find those quite a bit. And they may not have air conditioning. They may not have hot water. And so the homes are going to be very different. And I sometimes get people like, all right, I want a $50,000 home in Belize. And I saw on this website, it's okay, great. I mean, you can find that at local prices, but it may not be what you necessarily want. So I would say that Belizeans also are able to get financing through the bank. 80 to 100% financing is actually what the local banks will give to a Belizean citizen. So they do tend to have more flexibility, but I'd say they're typically not going for the $300,000 to $500,000 homes. And that does tend to be more of the expats who are purchasing them. Yeah, good question, Erin. Tony said, as always, great information. Email me with business questions. Yes, feel free to do so, Tony. And then Erin is saying there's no appraisals in Belize. Okay, great question. There are certified appraisal people. What are appraisers? What I don't know. Sorry, I don't know the name of it. That you can get in Belize. They're not always accurate. There's one here on Ambergris Caye that we know when we see an appraisal by him that he is giving a very high number, and he will straight up ask you, do you want it to be high? And we just did this with a business that we were selling, and I said, no, we don't want it to be high. We want it to be accurate, right? We just want it to be accurate. So I would say it's not necessarily always going to give you an accurate answer. What I would say in terms of if you're looking for comps is just ask the real estate agent that you're working with to give some comps. And, you know, if they've been in the industry, they know what things are selling for. We're a very tight-knit industry here. The realtors, especially here on Ambergris Caye and Cayo, we all tend to work very, very well together. And, you know, we have our group chats with all of the agents in it where everyone's communicating with each other, asking questions, and you build relationships with them. And so that's typically how we know what things are selling for. But I would say there's not necessarily a formal appraisal. Like there is, but it's not necessarily always accurate. Cindy is saying, you mentioned it taking a while to get a hotel license for Airbnb. Can you apply for that license prior to securing a property? No, you have to do it once you have the property, and then they will actually come out on multiple occasions to do certain checks. So there's a health inspector check, the fire department comes and they make sure that it's safe. You need to have exit signs, you need to have fire extinguishers. There's a whole list of things that you'll need, and they'll physically be coming to the property to check on it and make sure that you do have it. Two exit, like an exit entrance egresses. So if you're building a home, make sure that you have two. Older homes sometimes are exempt, but they give you a bit of a hard time on it. So just things like that. But you can look, it's the Belize Tourism Board, the BTB. The Belize Tourism Board is the one who issues the hotel license. And then from there, you'll be able to see the list of requirements, but you do need to have your property prior to securing that. And something else that I will mention, I'm glad that you brought this up, Cindy. So she said, if you're in something like Grand Creve, do they have that already? Yes. So when you're looking at condos are under strata title. So strata title is essentially when there are multiple units on one titled piece of property. And so strata means that you own the property that's there. Now, BTB, the Belize Tourism Board, requires, this is a requirement from them, that there's only one rental manager for the hotel, for the whole strata property there. So Grand Creve, for example, there's one hotel manager, and they actually do a fantastic job, right? But there's only one hotel manager that can operate nightly rentals there. So when that's the case, they tend to have the BTB license, and then they're going to add your unit or your property under their license. And that is a lot easier, a lot quicker. If the property that you're buying has already been in rentals, then I mean, you can just go straight in the day that you close, you can start to earn that rental income. But you cannot self-manage if you're in a strata property. We just had a fellow down here, Dave, if you're listening, I know that this is something that you're eagerly looking for is, you know, he did go to Sunset Creve and said, I really like this, but I want to rent it myself. And Grand Creve has a great program where you're able to bring renters, but they are going to be the ones who are doing the actual management of it. They're going to be the ones who are emailing the guests and telling them, this is where you're going to check in or coordinate the pickup and change the linens. And that's just a requirement for the BTB. So if you do not want a property that you are not allowed to manage by yourself, then if you want a property that you want to manage by yourself, then do not be looking at a condo complex. You'll typically need a single family home. So I hope that helped there. Jacqueline, is there any informational Zoom on using your retirement IRA for purchasing property and residency? Yes, great question, Jacqueline. We did a session with Advanta IRA and probably about 2 or 3 months ago. If you don't mind just emailing me, info@lunarealtybelize.com, I'll send you the YouTube link so that you don't have to go searching for it. And residency. So residency is a really great question. And if you guys don't mind, I'm going to just stay here and answer some questions as they're coming in. So I know we're past the hour. If you have to hop, please feel free to do so. Otherwise, we do have this session recorded. Residency. So there are a few different residency programs here in Belize. One of the most popular, I would say, is the permanent residency. And in order to qualify for permanent residency, you have to live in the country for 50 out of 52 weeks for a year. Right. So I know some people who have been coming in and out of the country for 10 years and never applied for permanent residency because they never met the 50 out of 52 week requirement for permanent residency. But let's say you're committed to it. You go 50 out of 52 weeks. You can apply for your residency. Typically takes about 6 months to get approved for your permanent residency. And then you're set. Right, then you're here, you're a permanent resident. I will tell you from experience, things are a whole lot easier when you're a permanent resident. Getting a golf cart permit or a car permit, getting a bank account open, so much easier when you have your residency here. But you do that permanent residency, and through that permanent residency, after 5 years of having that permanent residency, you can apply for your citizenship, your nationality. It takes about 2 to 3 years for them to go through that application, but it is something that you're eligible for. I'd say that's really one of the only requirements is that you're here the 50 out of 52 weeks. Now, there are others as well, but just note that. Now, the other residency is the QRP, Qualified Retired Persons Program. Through this program, you're able to bring in a container load of items duty-free. So for some people, this is great because they insist on bringing their a container load of items with them. Other people, I can tell you, many just sell what they have in their home country when they come down, or put it in storage and don't bring it because a lot of times properties come fully furnished. But regardless, you're able to bring a container load in. Now, if you're under the QRP, Qualified Retired Persons Program, you are not technically, well, you can work. They just opened up the investor QRP, but you have to employ 5 Belizeans. So you can technically work when you're under the QRP, but you need to employ 5 Belizeans here. I would say most people, really, if they're just coming to retire, or like a couple, if they want to run an Airbnb or something, one will go under permanent residency, one will go under the QRP for the benefits. Jamal is saying, can you buy, I hope that helps, Jacqueline, but we have a whole session on the IRA and then also residency. The IRA is with Advanta. It's an IRA company in the States. And then we did a residency session with an attorney named Ryan Robel. And I'll send that to you, but again, just email me and I'll send you those specific links because we have a bunch of videos here to have to go through. Jamal is saying, can you buy property, then retire at 45 with that property? I'm not sure if I understand that, but you can buy property at any age here. I mean, 18, if you're below 18, you just need some extra signatures, but you can buy property, you can retire here. I know some people who are retired at 35 years old. So it doesn't matter what age you are, you're certainly able to do so. And then awesome, thank you, Jacqueline, for your email address. Adam is saying, yes, certainly help to show you where the different properties are and the different condos that you've started scouting out. We can certainly do that for you. Our team can help you from the buying or the selling side. And we do work with a lot of folks who are looking to list their properties or looking to buy properties or looking to develop. We've even been doing a bunch of work with developers because, as you guys heard me mention, I have about 10 years of experience of working with a real estate developer here. So we cover lots of facets, but one thing I will tell you that I know is so important is just to make sure you're doing your homework and reviewing these resources, because there's a lot of information in there that you may not necessarily think about or think to ask, that once you see it, it'll help to just synthesize everything. And it doesn't need to be a daunting process. We're here to help you. So I know we've gone over the hour. I want to thank everybody so much for tuning in. I really do appreciate it. This was a fantastic group here. We had about 300 people register for our session. So nice to see many, many names on, a lot of new names, some that I do recognize. And hopefully we hope to see you here in person and go from there. Brian will send you over your hot sauce. Thank you so much for sending me your email address. And our team looks forward to chatting with you and hopefully seeing you here in paradise. Bye, everyone.